Hi everyone and welcome to the Merge Tech. In this video, we are going to discuss about 5 important coding principles that you should implement in your day-to-day work. Because if you don't follow, you'll be building a bad foundation which will lead to bad code base, right? Which will be hard to maintain. So the 5 good coding principles are, let us get started. The first one is you have to use meaningful variable names. So that is very much important because what I've seen with many developers is that they use wrong variable names and they store different kind of data in that. So you should always name those variables according to the kind of data you're storing. So suppose we are storing a date, then the variable's name should be related with date, like birth date, right? Or created date, like that. Instead of naming email and storing date there, this leads to a big confusion, right? So you should always use meaningful names because it helps to understand for everyone. So here you can already see an example that using x, y, z, this makes no sense. Like these are just random variable names, right? But if you use length, width, immediately we can see that it makes some kind of sense that what kind of data it is storing right there, right? So you'll get to know as you code more and more that the value of important meaningful variable names. So let's move to the next one. Next principle that you should be following is dry. Do not repeat yourself. So what I've seen with most junior developers is that they tend to repeat the logic again and again. So instead of writing a common function, what they do, they repeat the features, right? So whichever code is there, they just copy and paste it in another file. So what we should do, first let me show you this one. So here you can see we can create a function like this, but instead of doing this code, whatever it is doing, it's creating multiple objects and it is repeating the property names. What if the names of the property go wrong? So instead of last name, they can have a typo there, right? So there is no standard structure to follow. So console log is also repeating. So after adding the users, they are logging in. So we can create a common function and then we can utilize it again and again for this purpose. So this is the right approach. So you should create a function like this and then it should be utilized it. Okay. So this is just a small example, but same happens in real code as well. So I have just simplified it here. In real life, we'll have a lot of complicated code. So you don't want to repeat that complicated code, right? Because the logic may break somewhere. If you copy paste, you may have a typo there, or if you change the logic, then again in all the places where you copied, you have to search them, which is impossible. So that's why we have to create a common class or common function, and then we should try to utilize them as much as possible. Now the next one is KISS, which means keep it simple, stupid. So what junior developers do is that they try to complicate the things. They try to exaggerate, or they try to show how, complicated code they can write. This is completely against good code, because complicated code or complex code is very much difficult to understand. You should write code which is kind of declarative. It's not imperative, which means it should not take you very long to understand what that code is doing. You should try to simplify as much as possible using comments and so on. So here you can see it's complicating a lot. It's writing just unnecessary lines like checking if it is true, then return active. If it is false, then return inactive. So a lot of unnecessary lines are here. So we should try to simplify this as much as we can. We should be like, it should be intuitive. Just like how we speak English, it should be just like that. Okay. So this is the right approach. So it's so simple. We are just saying is active. So you can see here, even the variable name is so much meaningful. So if the user is active, then we return the active string, else we return inactive. So we have replaced with ternary operator right here instead of using so much of if-else conditions, right? So I hope you got this. Next is single responsibility principle. So what we should do, a function should not do multiple things. It should try to do only one single thing. It should focus on specializing only in one single thing. So here we can see this handle user function. Even the name is not that good. It tells handle user. Very ambiguous. Very ambiguous. It's not clear whatever the function is doing. It's not clear. So here we'll have a lot of code for processing user. Here we're just adding a log, but imagine that we can have a lot of code, right, for handling the user. Then for sending email, we have to create SMTP connection, right, and then send the email. So you can see this function is doing multiple things, right? So this is also wrong because it will be difficult to debug, right? Like what it is doing. And it's also not reusable, because if you want to use a particular part of that function in another place, so you won't be able to split it. So what we want to do, we want to break down, okay? So whenever we have a function which is doing multiple work, we want to break it down into multiple individual pieces, okay? And then we want to call them, okay, one by one in wherever we need, or maybe in a separate function we can call those individual modules, right? So this is very important, to have a function which is small enough, which is easy to debug and easy to understand, and also it should be modular enough that so that we can join them together as small pieces into one big unit, right? You should not like create a big function which has everything in it. So that's very, very difficult to debug, test, and also use it in terms of applicability. Now we have test-driven development. This is the last point I have selected for today. I don't want to create this video too long, but these are the points which are most important to follow. So test-driven development means first you should be writing the test, okay? So even as a developer, you should be learning how to write tests. That is very much important. So you should first write the test even before writing the code. That's the concept of test-driven development, and I like this concept very much. So what we do, whichever feature that we are trying to implement, right? So we would first write the test. So all the test cases that it should pass for the feature to be successfully, completed. So suppose if we don't follow this, we would be directly writing the code, right? Which happens most of the time because we are constrained by time most of the time. But if you want to write good quality software, then of course you have to work with tests, because you don't have any other option. So instead of writing the test later or in future, or like procrastinating and not doing that, this happens, right? So suppose we have a function called double, and it's supposed to double a number. So it's adding 2 times, but imagine that there is a bug, like it adds extra 1. This is just a simplified example. Of course, in real world, it will be much more complicated. Okay, so this is wrong implementation. Now, if we don't write any test, it will go undetected. In some cases, this happens a lot. Since this is simple, don't think that it's easily visible. Yeah, but in real life cases, many times it goes undetected. Lots of errors go undetected. If you just write the code due to time constraints, right? We have to sometimes work in like hectic position. So it will go undetected and you will have lots of bugs in your code. So that's why what we would like to do. So this function, even before writing this, we basically write the test. So whatever this function, we make it go through all the tests, we give all the inputs, then we check the outputs, whether they're matching or not. Okay. So you can see here, so this function double right here. So if we run the test, on double 2, it should be 4, on double 5, it should be 10. We will easily see that the tests are failing, the tests are not succeeding. So in this case, immediately we'll be able to rectify that the test cases, for some reason, it's failing. So which means there must be some error in our function, right? So then we can correct the function until we get the perfect implementation. So these are the 5 points that you should be taking care of. So I'm quickly summarizing it again. First, use meaningful variable names, very much important. Don't use ambiguous names. The variable names must be very much meaningful. Let it be verbose, let it be long, I don't care, but the variable names must make sense and it should be to the point. Then the second one is, do not repeat yourself. I absolutely hate code which repeats. Okay, it's very difficult to maintain. It should only be in one place, and you should try to make it as much as reusable as possible. Then the third one is, keep it simple. Try to simplify the code as much as possible. Add comments, okay? Make it human readable, all right? Do not complicate it too much. Like, try to simplify as much as you can. If it is very difficult to understand, add comments, okay? Then the fourth one is single responsibility principle. Do not create very big functions. Do not create very big files. Try to break it down into multiple files, multiple functions. It's easier to debug, understand, okay, and maintain. And the last one is test-driven development. Learn how to write tests. Always write a test whenever you write the logic for any feature that you want to implement. So thanks for watching this video. I'll see you in next videos. Subscribe.